On the 10th day of Christmas, namely 90s gave to me 10 giant fruitcakes, 9 jelly donuts, 8 words for happy, 7 bombs a ticking, 6 teens a drinking, 5 hee-hee-hees, 4 free funzos, 3 Corvettes, 2 drinks of sherry, and Pete in a pear tree.
I don't think that's going to work.
Welcome to Namely 90s. Wow. The podcast that takes you back to the time before smartphones, Google, and Y2K. Join your hosts as they relive the pop culture that shaped a generation and the parts that many people wish they could forget. Listen in to the conversation about how the decade defined those who spent their childhood there and how it shaped them as adults. So, turn down the grunge and dial up the internet. Let's get started. It's time for Namely 90s.
That's right. You're listening to Namely 90s. My name's Andrew, and over there is Brandon.
That's me.
You can find us online at namely90s.com or on Instagram and Bluesky at namely90s and namely90s.bsky.social. You can also find us on YouTube at youtube.com/@namely90s. And if you'd like to support the show, head over to Patreon at patreon.com/namely90s and get signed up for one of our support levels. And welcome to day 10, episode 10 of our 4th annual 12 Days of Christmas specials. We're getting there. And we are happy to introduce a new guest today, Andy Watson of the Cowboy, Jeff and Andy podcast. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Andy and I know we know each other IRL.
IRL.
Yeah. And Andy and I know our podcast, Namely 90s. We're on the same musical improv team put on by the Central Coast Comedy Theater, which is where I met you, Andy, right?
Yep.
And like Miss Morgan from a few episodes ago, we're all in the same musical improv thing. But yeah, thanks for taking the time to come on to our show. And I was actually just on your show. So a little synergy here. But yeah, tell us about Cowboy, Jeff and Andy.
It started, I have a guitar partner, Jeff, and he's a great solo player. And we started out as a duo and came up with the Cowboy, Jeff and Andy podcast just as a vehicle to, continue our artistic journey. And I had a by the way, I brought you, I know this episode has some fruitcake, so I bought you some fruitcake. Ooh. So we'll just pass that on next time I see Brandon. So it's a fruitcake kind of day.
Fantastic.
And it'll probably last long enough for you to share it with me when you get here, like way later in the month.
Yeah.
It has a shelf life of a year. So if I see you next year, I'll get it to you.
Yeah.
And then I also have I entered the Beard Arena in Santa Maria. I was never good at sports, so I entered the world of competitive hair growing. Uh-huh. And I have this Cowboy Jeff Andy character, and unfortunately I fell short. I feel the shame of not showing my manliness in front of the elite in Santa Maria, so we do kind of bits. And what else? I covered the rodeo this year as almost like a journalist. And then I went to the black and white ball, and I, just as this character, and I got at the beard contest, I almost got slapped by Carmelita, and it was just a whole rigmarole. But some guy with his big girth, he stepped in between us to avoid the shame of the slap. So, and we cover Santa Maria. There's really not, there is not a lot of journalism, and I've been active, and so I interview community leaders. We cover the city's updating its general plan. We've done a show on Lompoc, but we kind of jump all around the place.
Yeah, and that episode when you did the black and white ball, wasn't Leslie on that episode as well?
Yeah, Leslie was. So I love local. I love history, and but history speaks to the times that we have today, and we don't have enough focus on all politics is local.
Right. It starts at home. Starts in your small communities. That's the great thing about your podcast is that it shines a light on what's going on here, and while giving you like this, the Cowboy Jeff and Cowboy Andy characters are also entertaining. So it's I always hesitate to use the word infotainment because I used it all the time when I did Rewind, but it was like it's a great way to get your local stuff, hear some news, hear some history, and appreciate our area a little bit more.
And I was never really into country. I was talking to Brandon. I was into those 90 girl bands and funk and jam bands, but I saw the Ken Burns country documentary, and it focuses on singing and storytelling, and we have such a rich history on the Central Coast. We're right next to Bakersfield. And I don't think Bakersfield gets the cred that Nashville does. And that's one of my personal goals is to teach, to make sure people know about Buck Owens and Dwight Yoakam and Merle Haggard.
Oh, I like me a Merle Haggard. Any older classic country-ish for me is my thing. Although Andrew's sitting here thinking you hate country, but I love older country.
Yeah, it's very different than what people call country music today. I'll say that, but I was kind of an early '90s country fan. That was kind of my jam that time period. So still a little bit of flavor of the old stuff, but not quite the same.
Yeah,
there's a lot to make fun of. But
I
also like I like satirizing country.
Easy to do.
Yeah.
What is? So you've been doing this for almost a year, right? The Cowboy Jeff and Andy.
Yeah, I think Valentine's Day will be our 1-year anniversary.
That's awesome. What's like the one small tidbit or thing that you've done? What is your favorite thing you've learned about Santa Maria or Bakersfield country so far?
Well, there's I've learned of some artists that there's a member of the Country Music Hall of Fame that is from Santa Maria. I've learned all about rodeo. It is a world-class rodeo here, and we have a famous steer wrestler in this area, and the whole rodeo was streamed on the Cowboy channel. So we had, so it was big time sports. I interviewed a rodeo clown, and I actually went to rodeo clown school, and I got in the barrel and put on the baggy pants. And so this is really, I put myself into my subject matter.
That's awesome. It's interesting to see like some of the different guests that you've had on, it's the rodeo aspect from going to local events, but you also have like what was it? Ernie Ball. You had some from Ernie Ball come on for. That was your most recent episode that I listened to. That's what, guitar strings or?
Right. And the guy he was one of the original engineers that moved here in the early 80s, and he invented this volume pedal, which is like they've sold, thousands and thousands. And, Mark Knopfler had 2 of them on the stage. And so he can look up and see his invention. And they were just packaging strings. They were not even making them, but it was a fabulously successful business. Really, up there with the Fender guitars and the Gibsons, and the strings were really part of that.
Cool.
Those little stories. We don't even, especially, our country's getting older, and and you meet, people that are coming in from the big city and a lot of stories to tell.
How long have you been living in this area?
I moved here in 96.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember a public access show? Is it public access, Andrew? The Huell Hauser's California Gold.
Yeah, and I've been working up a bit. I'm a Huell Hauser, and I'm going down to Oceano. And,
is that the guy who says everything? He's amazing.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm working up a bit on you're ahead of me, man. I'm working up a bit on that guy.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, I grew up. California Gold. Yeah, my dad used to work out at the same gym with Huell. It was a big exercise. He was all buffed out.
He looked pretty buff for. I mean, I think I only caught the later years since I moved down here only like a decade and a half ago. But that's. I was thinking while you described your podcast, I'm like, you kind of have like a localized version or take on that with doing Santa Maria and the stories around here. But yeah, there's not a lot out there that celebrates the small stuff or the local stuff, and it's always good to have someone out there doing that.
And it's really the strength. I mean, I miss the city. I had lived in the suburbs of LA, and I really never lived in a city, and I moved up here, and I really like that culture. I was in Chicago for 2 weeks this summer, and we're going to shows, improv shows, comedy. But the one thing about small towns is you start meeting people, and like through the comedy theater. I mean, every class I take, I'm meeting more people. I'm meeting people in Santa Maria, and I think that's something that doesn't as much happen in a big city where there's millions of people. It's a real small. We're big fish in a small pond. Oh, yeah.
And speaking of our comedy theater, you also had Morgan on as a guest at one point. And I think you also interviewed Sabrina,
Yes, I did. I'm hitting up all my improv folks.
Sabrina, the founder of the comedy theater in town. It's... let's see. Andrew, you're the better interviewer.
Yes, but it is your locale that you're currently talking about.
That's true. There's been a lot of big city stuff coming. Sabrina has brought cabaret and more stand up. And so our little area is really getting more of the big city influence. So It is starting to feel, because when I first moved here, it was like, this is way too small town for me, but I've learned to love it. And like, the only thing I really miss is there's not enough like bands that I want to see that come through.
Yeah.
That's a point. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's like one band a month that I might want to go to. And I do miss those clubs. Like I was in San Diego, the Casbah and that club, the Soma, and where you could see like a band like almost every night, just even a local band that was playing punk rock, or the bands that are, the 80s cover band. And if I hear another cover band, it's just I'm going to lose it. I like that. How about some rockabilly or
the cover bands to just stay at the casino resort and go nowhere else. It's just too much.
The bands, it's like the genre that goes to the casino, right?
Mm-hmm. No, we're the cover band of the Pink Floyd cover band.
Yeah.
I know, and I'm done with Pink Floyd too. And the Beatles.
But they just released a new song.
Okay,
finally, a kindred spirit. I'm not the world's biggest fan of the Beatles, and I get a lot of crap for that. But
X, I really like the band X. So they're coming for Christmas, and they went into the '90s. So John Doe and Exene Cervenka, and
not to be confused with the XX, which doubled the X power. No.
Oh, not to be confused with the social media platform formerly known as Twitter.
Not to be confused with the 2000 action series starring Vin Diesel and Ice Cube, Triple X.
Well, I met I met a woman that, you know, she's non-binary and she goes by Lex, and I was like, you're probably kind of bummed out about that name right now since Musk bought Twitter. You know, X is just now, we're saturated with X.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Obvious question. Where can people find Cowboy, Jeff, and Andy podcast?
It's on Apple. It's on Apple Podcast. Under Cowboy, Jeff, and Andy.
And any socials or?
Well, it's Andy Watson on Facebook, and also our email is cowboyjeffandandy@gmail.com.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to tell us about your podcast before we get into? Well, actually, when I was on your episode, and I don't want to take from your episode because go listen to the episode that I'm on the Cowboy, Jeff, and Andy podcast. But you had one little you had some 90s Santa Maria info for me and your listeners. There was one kind of really egregious thing Mayor said about Santa Maria having a Mexican problem, and that just stuck with me.
Oh wow, yeah.
that was really in California. Someone's going to say that. That
he was, and it reminds me. I've been prepping, also watching this Animaniacs episode, and he was kind of a free speaking, working class, but he wasn't afraid to speak his mind, and it's kind of a parallel to some of the politicians that we have today, and I don't know. I wasn't, I didn't know the context, but it is surprising to hear in 1990. And, but it's really, we've been fighting in the Valley, the kind of an older generation and then a newer, more progressive, more people of color. And that's, that struggle goes on today as we really still have a very conservative city council. And it takes, it's taken 20 years to gradually, we talked about in the podcast in the mid 90s is when Abel Maldonado, who went on to be lieutenant governor, was first elected. And that was the first Latino representation in town. But racism is kind of underlying a lot of our politics today. It's coming back. And as this podcast, I think about this Animaniacs episode, and it talks about class. Dixon talks, Charles Dickens taught about class, which we probably need to be talking about a little bit less about race and more about class.
Agreed.
Can you believe the nerve of those people whose land we stole trying to live back in it? No, I'm kidding. That's
yeah.
I know. Well, I'm a school teacher, and I just thought about the Native American that says, when our immigration started, it started in 1492. That was our problem.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
And then all the movies about just what is it, the Flower Moon, where it just kind of goes through how it's just it's a horrible story, and we need to teach it. Ron DeSantos is trying to clean up our version of America, but kids need to hear the truth, and they know when you're not telling the truth.
No wonder Leo's frowning the whole time. Just say.
Who's frowning?
Leo.
Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh, Leonardo DiCaprio.
He has this whole frowning thing. I don't know what that's about. Maybe that's supposed to be, is that historically accurate? I don't know, but it's a bit, I guess.
Oh yeah. He just doesn't. Yeah.
So it's a character trait that he developed.
But yeah, definitely. And it struck a chord with me because that's something that we notice all the time when we go back and watch our 90s stuff, either for the specials or, Andrew's go-to is the comedy in the 90s is a fat suit and
it's fat jokes and homophobia. And that's those aren't the only two things, but that's now what I refer to 90s humor as. Fat jokes and homophobia.
Yeah, and it's we have come some ways, but you know, it also feels like we're regressing a little bit. But that's just me taking us off the rails here. We just did bring you on.
In Santa Maria, that Civic Center is still named after George Hobbs. It's the George Hobbs Civic Center. So I don't know, you know, if he should be canceled, but I'm sure that issue is going to come up someday.
Slightly oxymoronic, I guess.
Yes. And we have a mural. We just put up a mural, and the farm worker looks like Raquel Welch. So I guess they had a lot of hot farm workers back in the day.
As you do. As you do.
No Oaxacans. No way.
All right. We brought Cowboy Andy on to talk about an Animaniacs episode. I felt bad by the time we got our correspondence going. We only had a couple episodes left to pick from, but Animaniacs season 2, episode 24. This is kind of the Christmas special. And like one half of it, but we watched the episode, and also I learned that they didn't title their episodes that well. But we watched, what did we watch? A very special intro, a Christmas Plotz, and Little Drummer, Warner's. Sorry, my Audition keeps telling me my audio input's changed. But first off, we should talk about Animaniacs, which is an American animated comedy musical television series created by Tom Ruegger for Fox. This is Fox Kids block in 1993 before moving to the WB in 95 as a part of Kids WB afternoon programming. It ended in 1998, and it was the second animated series produced by Steven Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment in association with Warner Brothers Animation after Tiny Toon Adventures. The initial run was 99 episodes with a feature-length film ending it or capping it with Wacko's Wish, and it later had a reboot in 2020, which Andrew, you saw the trailer for,
and that was it.
I watched the first season of that and didn't hear anything about the second or third, but it apparently got canceled after the third, which came out this year. And Animaniacs is a variety show with short skits featuring a large cast of characters. There's no set format, and the majority of the episodes were 3 short mini episodes, each starring a different set of characters and bridging segments. Hallmarks of the series included its music, satirical social commentary, pop culture references, character catchphrases, and innuendo directed at an adult audience.
Ooh la la.
Ooh, yeah. Hello, nurse. They had a lot of children saying that.
The dental floss?
I do not know that reference. Andy, this was also your first experience with Animaniacs?
Yes, it was. And I actually test marketed in front of a classroom of children. So I got their reaction.
Oh, interesting.
How did they do? How did they do with it?
They didn't like all the kissing. There was a lot of kissing going on, and so that caused a lot of commotion. And then there was the sexy, as he's going up to the Christmas of the future. Mm-hmm. They're going up the stairway, and there's a bunch of scantily clad dancing girls.
Oh, yeah, the go-go dancer.
Yeah, with a shot from the back, and it was showing a little bit of the butt cheeks, and so that, so this was, it's a little bit more mature than the old Warner Brothers Bugs Bunny.
True. They also somehow managed to sex up Tiny Toons, which were the younger Toons.
That's nasty.
Yeah, they were real sexed up there in the 90s, weren't they?
Sex up those little...
They gave us Space Jam with Lola Bunny.
That's right.
And expected us not to get into that. I mean, what? That's a fair criticism. I'm glad it wasn't just, as a kid in the 90s, I was just like, yeah, this is how animation's supposed to be.
Yeah. That's an argument that some have made.
I could see how I mean, I love analyzing. We saw Elf the musical last week as well, and so I try to analyze why do kids like it, and they like they're trouble. Those Tiny Toons characters are little troublemakers. That they're like the Bart Simpson.
Oh yeah,
and of course they've been in prison.
Yep, in the tower,
concentration camp.
It's really true.
Oh yeah, they
branded one. Let's not forget about the meta aspect of the. Let's put the brand. It's kind of like having a show, about Butterfinger set in the Butterfinger factory. You know.
Yeah, Warner Brothers Studio Tower on the Warner Studio lot is where the Warners are held captive until they escape, and then cause a ruckus around the sets.
No wonder those kids are pissed, and they're always smiling,
having fun. Some of the more famous bits from this show is Yakko sang the state capitol song. That one, that's how a lot of people our age know their state capitals, and then they sang every country as well in a similar tone. And I think this is the show that spawned Pinky and the Brain. If Hello Nurse was popularized. I think that's all I can think of.
I guess I didn't realize Pinky and the Brain was popularized, but it was created by this.
Yep.
Also, well, I think it's a fun exercise to learn all the state capitals. Practically speaking, I'm not sure how useful that is. Just saying on a day-to-day basis, not information I need to have stored in the old noggin,
The country song was better.
Okay.
But, you never know when you're going to be on Jeopardy and have that Slumdog Millionaire moment where...
And the music, it was kind of yatta 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 yatta. It's like a klezmer, Jewish klezmer music. So there was a lot. It's real fast.
Oh yeah, catchy though.
Yes, very catchy.
They hooked you. All right, should we get into the meat of the episode?
Yeah, original music too. They had a big orchestra and Spielberg insisted on having original music for every one.
Oh yeah, I mean, you could tell that they put a lot of love and time into this series and into Tiny Toons. It just how well everything. There was a small era that I believe in the 90s. It was like from 93 to 96. Maybe that's just because I was a kid then, but where television made for children actually felt like it was on the level of adult television, not sexual adult television, but like actual, they treated you like you were on the same level. Nicktoon, that's when the Nicktoon started. That's where the later era live action Nickelodeon stuff was. There's just like this swell of, hey, kids understand when they're not being talked down to.
Except when we're trying to hide sexual innuendo in the jokes. The kids apparently can't detect that.
That's a more Disney
on a
thing.
conscious level. Yeah.
Yeah.
The baloney down the pants. I like that one.
It is true. That was pretty good.
All right, let's get into the episode, starting with a very special intro. This was a short little segment. They did like a black and white intro for the explaining the background of the Warner Brothers, which was kind of nice for a Christmas special because we do this a lot and we don't always know exactly what's going on with what character and who's who.
See, I vaguely remember the show and I thought they did that every time.
They did, but they did it special.
I see.
With the black and white and the falling snow, kind of reminded me of like it was either like Citizen Kane or It's a Wonderful Life. Couldn't remember which one, but that classic black and white thing. And then the song, that intro song, I don't know if this is the correct terminology these days, but it's a bop.
Yeah, I think is it. Do you think it's still slap or is that a bygone phrase?
Yeah, it still slaps. These are both terms that are probably 5 years old at this point.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I have no earthly idea what the hell people are saying. They're younger than me. Yeah. I'm only in my mid-30s.
Yep. If I had any Zoomer friends, they don't like to share lingo with me.
The Tide Pods have damaged their vocal cords, so they can't say all of the sounds that they need to. Anyway, all right. I enjoyed the intro. It was fun.
It explains the characters too, or at least it kind of explains the characters if you're paying attention.
And you don't see those type of themes. You don't see those. That's like a Gilligan's Island type, where it kind of gives a summary.
Oh yeah.
I think the minute plus intros, like people just don't have the attention span anymore.
Yeah,
like this show feels fast paced, but for kids these days, oh my gosh, I sound the oldest ever. The kids these days, like that's still too slow for them to have a minute long introduction. Yeah, it's kind of scary.
You should just know who Bluey is and all of the people in Bluey, whatever.
You're just like, why the hell is he Australian? She, by the way, not he.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Didn't even know. All right.
It's a good show. That's for another day.
The main segment, A Christmas Plotz, or the first main segment of two, A Christmas Plotz. Mr. Plotz is the CEO of Warner Brothers. It starts with people outside his office singing "We Wish You a Merry Christmas," and they're doing kind of a Christmas Carol Scrooge type.
We haven't seen a lot of these. We've done a lot of these episodes, and the Scrooge one is not that common,
right?
It takes more than 22 minutes usually to do it effectively. I think that's why.
True, but with animation, you can do the ghost stuff. The Xena episode we did.
But that mixed every trope and cliche in holiday television into one episode.
I guess that was an hour-long episode too.
Yeah.
We wish you Merry Christmas. He's surrounded by fruitcakes in his office. And then he chucks a fruitcake at at the carolers, saying, "I hate fruitcake," at one point. He brings in Ralph, the security guard, who he fires on Christmas Eve. And wah, wah. Yeah. Not even the "you have to work on Christmas Day" of the usual Christmas Carol. It's "I'm firing you."
And he's got the New Jersey accent, and he's the working class.
Yes.
I want to go back for a minute and ask about fruitcake.
Yes.
They've been milking that punchline for like decades.
True.
I've never received a fruitcake.
It's hard to find fruitcake.
My grandmother used to make fruitcake, but no one wanted it.
Where did this whole idea that it was bad come from? Like, is there a good fruitcake out there? Is it just bad by design? I don't get it.
I mean, we did watch that Alton Brown episode.
Yeah, and I feel like I would have eaten the fruitcake that he produced by the end of that.
Fair, but yeah, I don't know where it stems from, but I do know as a kid, every time I would see fruitcake, I'd be like, I would like any of the other Christmas cookies.
I mean, to be fair, I'm not a fan of when baked goods randomly have fruit in them. It's not really my thing.
I like muffins.
Raisin muffins?
Blueberry muffins.
Which aren't dissimilar from raisins, really, if you think about it.
Like, you get dried out in the process, I guess. I don't like raisins, though. Yeah. Andy, what's your take on fruitcake?
I don't know. I if you heat it up and put a little butter on it.
That must be the secret. I always try to go for it cold and in a
yeah. I think that's what didn't Alton Brown at the end of his episode like slice it and then saute it in butter or something. Like yeah, that would make anything taste good.
Or rum.
Yeah. Oh, that rum too.
Well, my grandmother soaked it in rum.
Well, the whole deal, right? Supposedly it was to like preserve the fruits. I don't know the whole thing. I've just never had it. don't really have a desire to, but I feel like it gets a really bad rap. And it's also like an old joke at this point.
True.
Yeah, it's a trope.
Let's see. So he fires Ralph. Starts more cost-cutting measures, including employees must bring their own toilet paper.
Now, the sad thing about that is that's not far off. Even today,
like for Amazon,
it's just the cost cutting measures. I mean, for a while there, toilet paper was like you get shanked on the street if you had a bunch of toilet paper trying to walk back to your house, or your apartment.
I mean, that was COVID times, though. I mean,
but I do think it's interesting, these generations that grew up in the generation that grew up during the Great Depression, they kind of have these things like. They keep old nails and straighten them out and keep them in a coffee can just so that, because times are really tight. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, for all of us, we're all always going to have that one package of toilet paper that's like stashed somewhere in the attic or behind the water heater because of the great toilet paper shortage of 2020.
That's that's our scar that we have to carry with us for the rest of our lives.
Yes.
Let's see. So the squirrel lady, I don't remember what her actual name is. She shows up as the Marley Brothers surrogates, Slappy Squirrel. And she shows up and like, you're going to be visited by 3 ghosts tonight. Classic Christmas Carol. And then she goes on to complain about only being paid scale for this. There's a lot of like inside Hollywood, inside baseball jokes that they have in the show.
The problem is if you don't know anything about Hollywood, those jokes mean nothing.
Right. Like a kid.
Or most people.
Nasal.
Yeah.
It's very nasal. She sounds like Ethel Merman.
Yes. Her character is kind of, she's characterized as like an elderly, grouchy cartoon tree squirrel, and she has that Ethel Merman voice, which, again, as a kid, right over your head. She just sounds funny, and she's old and tired.
And she's a squirrel for some reason.
Yes. I mean, that's just her character. She's a recurring character on the show.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah. And she also has like a younger squirrel with her. Anyway, the first ghost, the Ghost of Christmas Past, is played by Wacko. Does a little short song, and then takes Mr. Plotz or shows him a video of his past. Let's see. As a baby, he's gonna sue the doctor for charging his mother too much for delivery and slapping him on the way out.
I like that. In what universe does the doctor walk into the room with the bill? In reality, like 8 weeks later, you get 12 bills. One from the anesthesiologist, one for each Tylenol that you took while you were there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
sometimes for medication that you didn't even take, which were like nowadays. Apparently, I just watched a bit on how hospitals are overcharging women for their deliveries. Speaking of deliveries, yeah. Speaking of deliveries, he visits Santa at 5 years old with a team of lawyers with demands for what he wants for Christmas. His first Santa visit, and then he even fires.
Was this the original Boss Baby? Was this the origin of that?
Yeah, that's what. Yeah,
that is a stupid movie.
Which they made into a TV series and a sequel film.
Well, at least Alec Baldwin didn't shoot anyone on that set.
Didn't shoot the baby.
Yeah.
Shoots the Boss Baby. Dot is okay. Oh, and he fires his dad on Christmas. Last bit there.
It reminded me of Fred Trump. He was kind of a, Donald would fire his dad if he could, but
only after he gets the loan.
Right.
Let's see. Dot then shows up as Ghost of Christmas Present in a present. Get it? It's a pun, she says. Gives another quick song. And then he is taken to Ralph's home as a ghost to see him and his son and his wife, who is basically just him in drag. And their poor Christmas Eve and trailer park existence, and they don't have any roast meat for dinner. They have turkey jello.
Oh gosh, that was revolting. Yikes. This part was pretty quick. There wasn't any other. It was just like the son vows revenge on Mr. Plotz, and that was about it. Maybe
now
some
we've
gag.
created ISIS.
Yeah. Yes. The son will have his revenge. And then Yakko comes in as the ghost of Christmas Future. But first he gets scared because he was all death looking, and he calls for security, but realizes he fired security. Which is funny to think that Ralph is the only security guard for the entire Warner lot. And then
and why did they hire that? What's up with the hiring practices over at that corporation? They hire these bad bosses.
If you get high enough in the ranks, you could just pay yourself and no one else, right?
I wonder if it was him who came up with that horrible WB campaign in the 90s, the WB.
Could be. And that's why they had to sell to the CW. Let's see. During the song, he gets pulled along with Yakko up some ghost stairs where the dancers showed up that the kids didn't approve of. It was like a flapper dancer, right? Or like it wasn't. They weren't go-go's. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then at one point, Mr. Plotz says, "This is stupid," which I heard in Andrew's voice for some reason.
Yeah.
The Yakko gets off his "Hello, nurses" catchphrase, which again totally didn't scar me as a child or destroy my understanding of relationships with women going forward. And by the time they get to the future, Ralph's kid is a CEO of Warner Brothers. And Mr. Plotz is the security guard. They also do a quick point over to the cemetery gag where he thinks he's dead, but and
as if that isn't expected to happen at some point,
right?
But he really loses his status. That is death.
Yeah,
and then he's tortured by the little animated characters. So that's his version of hell.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. So after repenting, I guess that's the thing Scrooge does, right? He wakes up and he's like, "Oh, I have to be a better person." Mm-hmm. Mr. Plotz yells out his window at the Warner siblings who are outside pretending to be orphans for some reason, to buy the biggest fruitcake and deliver it to Ralph's house. And then he goes over with presents to the trailer park, unfires Ralph. The wife meets Mr. Plotz and says, "Charmed, I'm sure," like the woman from White Christmas that my cousin always laughs at when she does it. I got the reference. White Christmas, the musical with Bing Crosby and can't remember. Anyway, Rosemary Clooney's in it. Nope. All right. And then the Warners drop a giant fruitcake on him.
I like how when he's explaining to the security guard, like he's lying about having said
he fired him.
He said he was inspired by him. It's like, if you're doing the right thing, shouldn't you say, "I'm sorry, I was wrong," and then like rehire him?
Yes.
Okay, good.
But also, I think he was trying to curb the son from taking over his position in the future.
True.
Because he bribes him with a pony, and And then the kid does the same thing, and he wants a horse, not a pony.
The post-credit scene is him just smothering the kid with a pillow.
This is like Succession.
Exactly. Yeah. Then we move on to Little Drummer Warners, if everyone's ready.
Yeah, I can't get enough of the baby Jesus.
The baby Jesus. Yes. I mean, I didn't realize that this was just a straight up nativity when we picked it, but
that was one white Jesus baby, I'll tell you what.
And that and Joseph looked like he was the linebacker for the Patriots.
Yeah. With the goat. Oh yeah. Yeah. So basically it's a musical nativity. They start with Silent Night, and then they do We Three Kings, but as shepherds, and it's the Warner brothers and the Warner sister Dot are the shepherds. They get to Bethlehem by singing Little Town of Bethlehem. Or there's a kids choir doing that. They get to the baby Jesus by singing Away in a Manger. And then they were actually showing the baby Jesus instead of like a glowing orb like they did in the Xena episode that we watched way back when.
That was so stupid.
The last time we had a nativity scene was at the end of a Xena episode where she invents the Christmas Carol Dickensian archetype. They have Jesus, Mary, and Joseph just walking on a Greek road apparently to Bethlehem or from Bethlehem, and she's just carrying a small child, which is just a giant shining orb. It broke our brains. And then the next year we watched the Hercules episode that led into them doing that. But anyway, I digress. This Three Kings, We Three Kings played again, and actual Three Kings came, which I thought had some nice orchestration to it. And then they get to the meat of this bit where the kings give their gifts, and then the shepherds are like, oh, what can we give the baby Jesus? And Little Drummer Boy starts. Yes. Well, Wacko has his drum. So they do the Little Drummer Boy parts of the song, and then it gets jazzy.
Jazz hands. Drum
jazz
solo.
Hands.
A drum solo.
Drum solo with a full swing band and dancing. Yeah. And then they go back to the OG song and style of Little Drummer Boy. And then the baby Jesus smiles, and then the episode ends.
And it turns out that the Virgin Mary loves jazz.
Yeah, she was super into it.
She was clapping.
Yeah. Nothing to read into there. But yeah, thoughts on thoughts on the Little Drummer Warners, because I guess there wasn't much of a plot to that one. It's just a straight up nativity.
I thought about Life of Brian. It's like you had these alternative
Monty Python.
Alternative wise men, and I just expected I'm Brian. No, I'm Brian. So is my wife, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got the impression they were just trying to fill time.
True, because I think we only did one half of this whole Christmas special, because the next one, there were 3 more sketches. But since we had to pay to watch this, we're only doing the first half. We're doing the ones that were musical, because we have some musical guests, or a musical guest on here. But yeah, final thoughts on the episode as a whole.
I think I don't see a lot of Jesus in cartoons. I mean,
true.
I think maybe in these polarized times, you're not seeing it as much. And I wonder what Spielberg, were there any Spielberg elements, or did he just kind of put his name on there and get his paycheck?
Good question. Yeah, it was his production house that did this.
Which, by the way, is the same production house that produced ER, which is obviously great. Yeah,
that's a good point.
And the Warner characters, they are nondescript. They're like not, it's like, what animals are they? Mm-hmm. They're kind of like those Dr. Seuss animals that you're just kind of made up.
And have that same cat in the hat type power that can do anything, pop anywhere, fit into anything.
I'd like to point out that Steven Spielberg is Jewish, by the way.
Good point. Good point.
As is most of Hollywood.
But they got the baby Jesus in there.
Yeah.
Hey, Jesus was a Jew.
Exactly.
Well, and I also thought about, if you look at Bethlehem today, it's a divided city. It's like, the sequel, they could bump into the wall and, go into the Palestinian section. Mm-hmm. Have a wholly different experience.
It would be, I mean, that might be something they actually did in the reboot. Who knows how far they went. I thought, I mean, the songs were good. I always like A Christmas Carol. It was interesting to see a depiction of Jesus, especially in animation. That wasn't, I mean, the only other time I can think of it is in Rick and Morty when he has like 12-pack abs and punches a person to death. So yeah.
This episode.
He had a hard time.
I thought the writing was clever. Like I thought the jokes were clever, better than average. The songwriting was pretty good, and those things often overlapped, obviously. I was exhausted by the end of it. Just the pacing, and then also some of the stuff that just seemed kind of unnecessary. Doesn't really lend itself to this format very well.
Oh, I was making fun of it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not linear enough. It's kind of all over the place. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's not something I remember this show vaguely. I guess I remember like the song and the characters, but I don't remember this specific episode or any specific episode. I don't know that I could watch this for any great length of time, but for some of the stuff, it was pretty funny. I mean, there were some better than some of the sitcoms we've watched. I'll tell you what.
True.
As far as the joke writing
and the parodies, I could really learn. Mm-hmm. I mean, they really did a lot of parodies, and you could definitely learn how to do that.
All right. And that's it for this holiday edition of Namely 90s. Sorry, I got something caught in my throat. Thank you to Andy of the Cowboy, Jeff, and Andy podcast for coming on. Can you let our listeners, again, know where to find you?
It is Cowboy, Jeff, and Andy on Apple Podcasts.
Awesome. And as always, you can find us on Instagram, Bluesky, and YouTube at Namely90s with a 90s and tell us how your holidays are going. If you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon at patreon.com/Namely90s, also with a 90s. Finally, you can also contact us through our website, Namely90s.com, but probably not. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Audible, Warner Brothers, Deezer, TuneIn, iHeart, Good Pods, and wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Brandon, that's Andrew, and thank you one final time to Cowboy Andy of the Cowboy, Jeff, and Andy podcast, and we'll catch you tomorrow for day 11 of our 12 days of Christmas specials 2023.
I can't wait.